Yo, what is up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here along with Sean.
Go Grizz.
And today, guys, it's a time of celebration. The NBA is officially coming back as the NBA Board of Governors has approved for the NBA to return. And what this includes is that the NBA Board of Governors approved a 22-team return to play. So for those teams, I believe it's 13 teams from the Western Conference and 9 teams from the Eastern Conference. The rest of those teams, thanks for playing. We'll see you later. That's basically what the NBA is trying to say to those guys. But let's kind of talk about it a little bit. But let me read this article from Agent Wojnarowski on ESPN. And the article goes to say this: the NBA Board of Governors intends to approve a league proposal on the 22-team format to restart the season in Orlando, Florida. Commissioner Silver and the League Advisory and Finance Committee have shared the board details of a plan with teams to play at the Walt Disney Resort, sources say. The plan includes 13 Western Conference teams, 9 Eastern Conference teams, 8 regular season play-in games, and possibly a tournament, a play-in tournament for the 8th seed and the playoff, sources say. Another thing to note for this is that the top 16 teams in the Eastern and Western Conference will be joined by 6 teams currently within 6 games of the 8th seed. Those teams include the New Orleans Pelicans, the Portland Trailblazers, San Antonio Spurs, Sacramento Kings, I can't believe that, Phoenix Suns, and the Washington Wizards, which I also can't believe. But the play-in tournament will include the number 8 and 9 teams if the 9th seed finishes in the regular season within 4 games of the 8th. Sources say in that case, the 8th seed enters a double elimination tournament, and the number 9 seed a single elimination tournament, sources say. So, Sean, I know I talked about it a mouthful here, just kind of describing the situation. What do you feel? What's your gut reaction for the NBA returning? Do you like the idea of what they went with, or do you feel like there was other ways they could have gone about it?
My gut reaction, I saw the headline pop up, 22 team, 22 teams returning, NBA season restarting, and I was really excited. And then once I clicked into the details and I saw that it was 13 Western Conference teams and only 9 Eastern Conference teams, to me, it just didn't really make sense. You look at the Eastern Conference and what the Wizards have one more win than the Hornets, 2 more than the Bulls. And it seems like the differential in the win-lose record of these different playoff structures here for the East and the West, I mean, it's really only one seed that's up for grabs. And there's really only one team that's vulnerable here in this playoff situation, and it's my Grizzlies. Because, I mean, as far as I can see, it looks like, Orlando and Brooklyn have 6 games up on the Wizards. I don't see in an 8-game series that, or 8 new games in the season. I don't see them, getting passed up. Maybe they can pull within 4 and force, that playoff tournament. But really, just looks like a way to make the West a little more interesting. I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about all those teams in the West getting this extra advantage of making the playoffs, and especially with that, they just have to get within 4 games of the 8th seed, and then they get to play them in a playoff series.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that just doesn't make sense, and it seems a little unfair to get the Grizzlies, who are in 8th right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to agree with you there. What I don't like about it is that we're kind of setting a precedent for teams like the Sacramento Kings, who have historically been bad, the New Orleans Pelicans, who are they have a young team, but I don't think they're as good right now. Maybe in a couple years they'll get to where they need to get to. And then, of course, you have teams like the San Antonio Spurs and the Phoenix Suns. The Suns, to me, is an interesting one because those guys just haven't been having a winning culture there. And the fact that those guys get to join this 22-team sort of deal makes no sense to me. I mean, I get the fact that the Eastern Conference is definitely not as strong and it's definitely top-heavy in many cases. But what I don't agree with is the fact that we're kind of setting a precedence for maybe next year these teams are going to be like, hey, look, you did it last year. Why can't we do it this year? I know that the current pandemic situation that's going on, plus everything else that's kind of creating a stir in the NBA, is causing a lot of people kind of more questions than answers. But I mean, it's like I said, it's going to be interesting to see the Lakers, how they're going to handle this, the Clippers, and even your Grizzlies, like the bottom teams. Like, I'm curious to see if it's, like you said, if they go 400, like what is the like. Basically, you could just say, I just need to win 4 games. I can relax and then play a play-in game to get into that playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real story is going to be when we see what teams they're going to have to play. there's 22 teams in. They each have to play 8 games. We don't know what that schedule is going to look like. Um, it could be really telling if you see, the teams that are vying to get into that 8 seed spot, maybe facing each other or facing other weak teams. But, who in that structure is going to have to play the top teams? Are one of the teams, right there on the bubble in the 8 spot, or like the Magic, the Nets, the Grizzlies? Are they going to have to end up,
Mm-hmm.
playing against, the 1, 2s, and 3s of each conference in their games? They could, drop all of those games. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how they come up with that schedule, because they can't just stick with the schedule that they had on paper, because a lot of some of those teams aren't going to be playing for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other reason why they decided to go 22 teams instead of 16 is the financial reasons for those other teams. I know that not every single NBA team makes money, but at the same time, it's like, for example, looking at the standings, it's like, is it fair enough to say that the Charlotte or like the Washington Wizards deserve any of that money that they're getting compared to these other teams that have won their games and actually put in the time and effort to get themselves better? Like, obviously, the Washington Wizards were without John Wall, and we can kind of talk and argue semantics about that sort of situation. But to me, a
Yeah.
team like the Phoenix Suns, who are way behind the Memphis Grizzlies for the 8th spot, it just doesn't make any sense to me why you wouldn't just go 16 teams. And even if you wanted to do this, Sean, I would even be okay with a World Cup type of series where you have each like a 4 or 5 team group stage. You play everyone twice, and then it kind of does World Cup style. Like, I know you're a big soccer fan. You played soccer before, so to me, I think I would rather like that approach better than going this way. I mean, I understand that some people might not be okay with just you have to play everyone twice. I mean, there's certain deals. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not a huge fan of what they're doing, but I will take it better than most. The other thing I don't like is the fact that this is probably going to go on until late October, or maybe not late October, but like early October, I would assume, because we have 8 games, starts in end of July, basically mid July, end of July. I mean, this is going to go August, September. Yeah, it could go until October.
Yeah, the league could be running way over its normal extended time, and it'll have to compete with, soccer, which is returning. It'll compete with the NFL. I mean, a lot of people are going to be, possibly not even tuned in on it, especially when it comes to like the early playoff games here, and the 1 versus 8 seeds, or the 2 versus 7s. It's going to be interesting to see, though, because there could be a lot of parity just given the amount of time off. And I think we know, is it Giannis didn't even have a hoop at his house or anything to practice on.
Yeah.
A lot of these players might have not actually been in the position to be able to be playing during this break. It could be interesting to see if there's teams that, maybe had gotten together and gelled more versus ones that didn't. Could it potentially create some low seed to high seed upsets that people don't see coming? And I mean, that could increase the intrigue, but also with, other sports popping up and the start of the NFL. And I don't think the NFL is going to take any time off for coronavirus at this point. It'll just be interesting to see how that plays out for viewership.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in total agreements with you. I mean, like you talked about, if to me, if the NBA is going to be the biggest loser here if their top teams don't make it to the finals, because I know that there's a parity, and I know a lot of people like that, but the numbers showed that parity in the NBA or the NFL or whatever it is, the numbers are lower in ratings. I mean, the fact that we had a San Antonio Spurs New Jersey Nets final at one point, not a lot of people watched that final. And I believe it's going to be the same situation here if the Lakers or the Clippers don't make the playoffs. Obviously, you're a Grizzlies fan, as we can tell by your jersey. So, like, obviously for you, it would be exciting for the Memphis Grizzlies to make the NBA Finals, or even get close to that, the Western Conference Finals. But in terms of sakes for the brand, which I know that the NBA is hurting because they're losing a lot of money, not showing their games. They've asked players to take a pay cut. um, to me, like I said, I think it's going to hurt the bottom line of the NBA and the viewership if these two teams like the Clippers and the Lakers don't make the NBA Finals, or whether it's the Bucks or the Celtics. I mean, to me, I feel like it's Milwaukee or bust in the East, because The Toronto Raptors are a great team, but they have no star on them. Boston Celtics are an okay team. I'm a fan of them, but at the same time, um,
Will Kevin Durant be back?
I think he said he's not going to play. I
He's
think
not going to play. He's
no,
not going to play. I was going to say that could make things interesting, but
I don't think him or Kyrie are going to play in this NBA. Whatchamacallit, and they're not going to be playing in this playoffs. I feel like
Kyrie injured.
He got a shoulder injury. I mean, to me, I feel like, I mean, there's no incentive for Kyrie to play by himself along with guys that, I mean, to me, it's kind of a Boston 2.0 with him in Brooklyn. I mean, we can make a separate video for that. But it just kind of feels that way. The fact that there's just no chemistry with that team. I feel like they're very convoluted. I mean, I felt like they had more chemistry last year when they faced the Philadelphia 76ers and actually kind of made it interesting. But nevertheless, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be crazy times, and I'm excited for NBA to come back. It's officially coming back, so that's even, the biggest news and the most exciting news that I've heard all day. It's almost like Christmas to me. But I mean, Sean, is there anything else that we need to talk about this 22-team playoff?
Who do you think, I guess, is the biggest winner and biggest loser of this structure?
To me, I feel like the biggest winner is probably going to be the LA Clippers due to the fact that they were injured and hurt a lot. I think Kawhi Leonard with his load management, he's going to be a guy that, and this team and Paul George as well, are going to benefit from the fact that they only have to play 8 games, like 8 regular season games, which they can even just slack off and not play those games and they can just rest players even more if they wanted to. Obviously they probably wouldn't because you want to get back into the swing of things. And I think the Lakers also, because I think the Lakers, before the pandemic started, I believe that they had all the momentum in the world. They just beat Giannis, they just beat the Clippers, and LeBron James was on that MVP-esque type of role, and it was going to be a really tight race between Giannis and LeBron James, because LeBron James had a second strong half. Meanwhile, Giannis had a first strong and kind of lingered back a little bit in the second half of the season. But I think the biggest winners to me are going to be the lower seed teams, like your Memphis Grizzlies. I think the Orlando Magic could be one as well, just due to the fact that these teams and even the teams that are not in the top 8, I think are the biggest winners too, because they essentially get to go into the playoffs or get to go into the season. Meanwhile, you have these other teams like the Hawks, the Pistons, the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks will always be losers. The Cleveland Cavaliers, Minnesota Timberwolves, Golden State, like all those teams don't get to participate. Meanwhile, these teams get to, so I think they're the biggest winners to me. But what about you, Sean?
I think my biggest winners here, and I think this might surprise some people, is going to be the Toronto Raptors. They've been operating under different guidelines than all the teams based in the U.S. I'm not exactly sure what they've been doing, but given that they're in Canada, they obviously don't have the exact same laws as everyone here, and so they could have been being able to practice, being able to continue to work on their chemistry. Toronto's always been a chemistry-based team, one that just focuses on passing, moving around the ball. Pascal Siakam continues to get to develop. I could see them having a big advantage heading into the Eastern playoffs, especially because the East it's definitely weaker than the West here. And I mean, Milwaukee has a lot of good players. Obviously, Giannis might be the best player in the league, but I think Toronto, just the way they work the ball around and just the way that they've operated the past couple of years, this could play to them to an advantage. And for me, I think the biggest loser is my Grizzlies. I think given the fact that they have a 3-game lead over Portland, we're going into an 8-game season, and we don't know who they're going to play against. And as long as that ninth ranked team in the West is within 4 games of them, they have to play them in a playoff. And Memphis is a young team. Imagine them having to go to a playoff against Portland, who has Damian Lillard. People who have all these, deep experience in playoff runs and big time games against a rookie team like Memphis Grizzlies, and who have lots of young players like Jaren Jackson, Brandon Clark and John Morant. For me, it just seems like the Grizzlies have a lot of other teams now that they have to compete against, just from the Spurs, Kings, Pelicans, Blazers, and Suns. So I think it's going to be really interesting, but those are my biggest winners and losers from this.
Yeah, and then what do you feel like? I mean, we probably talked about this a little bit, but why do you think that it's unfair, or maybe you don't, that 13 teams from the Western Conference can make it, meanwhile only 9 from the Eastern Conference can make it? Do you feel like that's fair? Do you feel like that's unfair?
I mean, I feel like it's unfair just because if you do the math on the 8 games, technically the Hornets and the Bulls could still, pull into that 8 seed. And if you're actually gonna make it so if they're within 4 games of the 8th seed and they get to play in a playoff spot, the Knicks could even make it, and the Pistons could even make it, and the Hawks. Because what if Orlando went 0-8? What if the Nets went 0-8? And then the Wizards went like 3-5. Those teams below, if they went on a run, one of them, went 7-1, 8-0, they could be within that 4 game barrier to play into that 8 spot. So to me, it just doesn't make sense where they decided to make those cuts. I'm wondering, if the owners of the teams had any decisions about that and just said that they don't want to compete in it. But to me, it just doesn't really make sense because, it's within even though it's super unlikely, it's within the realm of possibility that those 8 games could put them into that 9th spot where then they would get to compete for the 8th spot. And every team that was out West is getting the opportunity it's within the realm of possibility of making it, is getting the opportunity to compete. So to me, it just didn't really make sense. Yeah.
I'm wondering too, thinking about it, I wonder if there was like a percentage point where it's like, let's say for example, the Knicks had like a point something chance to get to the 8th seed. I'm wondering if Adam Silver and the Board of Governors just looked at that and said, maybe, we're anything below like a certain percentage point, they're just like, yeah, we're just not going to have you join the playoffs. But I'm in agreement with you, Sean. Like, I just think it's not fair because there's times where we've seen, crazier things in sports. And I think the fact that they're not allowed to be given that opportunity is it's ridiculous. And it's not fair for those teams that, put in just as much effort as these other teams.
Agreed. I do have one last thing to show here. I have my pug and her Grizz jersey. She's ready for our run. Ja Morant, Brandon Clark, best rookies in the league. We're going.
We're going. All right. Is there any other questions do you think that we should kind of talk to the viewers about? I mean, is there anything that you want to bring up about this 22-team playoffs before we decide to sign off?
I think I got everything covered.
All right. I mean, that's going to be it here, guys, for the channel. Obviously, this is late-breaking news. The NBA Board of Governors has approved for the NBA to return in late July. We know that 22 teams are going to be in Walt Disney, like an AAU team style, where if you played AAU before, you know that, or you played club soccer, where you just go into one resort and just play basketball or play soccer, whatever it is. It's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be some heartbreaks. There's going to be some anger, and there's also going to be some happiness. I'm just glad that sports are finally coming back. NBA basketball is important to everybody. It's important to a lot of people, and a lot of people use it to escape reality. So let's see what the NBA can do. The biggest questions coming into this, of course, are going to be LeBron James. Can he win the championship? The question from you, of course, can the Grizzlies get to the NBA Finals and secure a spot? And can the Clippers and the Lakers, is that going to be a Western Conference final matchup? Can Giannis finally get over the hump and get to the NBA Finals? That's going to be the biggest questions leading into the NBA as we continue going forward. But anyway, guys, this has been your boy Bernie along with Sean.
Let's go.
Bringing you the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. And guys, we will come back with once we know the seedings and once we know everything, more information, we'll of course make a predictions video on who's going to be in the playoffs, who we think is going to be in that single elimination tournament. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. But anyway, guys, remember to hit that like button. Also remember to hit that subscribe button. Smash it, if you will. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.
Thanks for joining.
All right. Boom.
That's how it's done.